to the left and 1 millimeter to the top. You don't touch the ball head, you don't touch the tripod. All you do is take your rise fall, adjust it there, and then adjust your shift. Okay, so those are compositional movements. So anytime all we're doing is changing the height or changing the left and right orientation of something, those are just compositional movements. They're not going to affect focus. Well, they will. You're going to eliminate part of what's in the image area, but otherwise it does not affect focus. All it does is reframe your image, okay? So the whole idea with setting up the camera is to get it set up, roughly frame your subject, and then refine your framing if you need to using rise, fall, and shift, okay? Then the other movements we have available to us. So when we're base tilting, obviously we're tilting from the base of the standard. When we axis tilt, we're tilting from the center axis point of that standard stationary while the top of it's getting radically changed. Right. When we axis tilt, the bottom and top are changing mostly equally while the center is remaining sharp. So they clearly have different capabilities. Yeah. Now, not every view camera offers axis tilt. And initially, because of working with the Ebony, I really like to have both base and axis tilt because they do, in fact, do two different jobs. But giving those up and now only having base on the back and axis tilt on the front, it works out just fine. When you had both. It really comes down to looking at the ground glass and accomplishing what you want to accomplish. Sure. So, right. Like, you know, when I set up in the field and I say, okay, I want this kind of image, I don't automatically start saying, okay, I'm going to do 3 degrees of this and 5 degrees of that and 6 millimeters that. You know, I work with it a little bit to shape the image and to see how it comes up. So even though I'm telling you principles like this, ultimately it comes, the thing I say is the ground glass doesn't lie. You look at the ground glass, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. Unlike a smaller format camera where you always have to use depth of field preview, your depth of field preview is live all the time when you're looking at the ground glass. So whatever movements you make become instantaneously obvious to you on the ground glass. So you can see whether or not that's what you were trying to achieve. So later, when we actually start working with the camera, we'll set the camera up and we'll do this exactly, you know, tilting front and back and comparing and so on. The biggest way to get through the challenges of using the view camera is to interpret the world as just planes. Everything has a plane, okay? So whatever the way the line is running, how we're pointing the camera, we want to line up the planes of our subject with the planes of the camera. It's as simple as that without getting into too many more details just yet. That's the way I want you guys to think, so that when you approach a scene to photograph, the first thing you start doing before actually breaking your camera out is analyzing those planes, okay? So if I decide I want to shoot this, where do I want to put my camera and where are my planes of focus? How do things line up? So this is the way you should always approach a scene to photograph, is what are the planes? So let's say, for instance, common misconception about using the view camera is that, well, it has movements, so I make movements on every photograph, and that's simply not true. So what you're proposing here, if you were to include nothing in the foreground and you're just flat shooting that scene, yeah, to me, this is a flat plane, okay? Oh, okay. So we would need no movements. It'd be like using a roll film camera. Yeah, it's just flat plane. Of course, there are exceptions. You may want to actually make something out of focus, and then in that case, you might want to swing or tilt to throw something out of focus. Sure. But we'll get into more of that later as well. When you set the camera up is generally the instruction books will tell you to set the bed level and to neutralize the standards and everything. That's pretty impractical. Most of the time, especially with landscape photography, it's pretty uncommon to be able to set your camera up perfectly flat like this and shoot what you want to shoot. Most of the time you're either tilting back, you're tilting down, whatever, and it's perfectly fine. So despite the book saying that everything needs to be neutral, the bed, the standards, everything, I tell you, you know, neutralize the standards, make sure you don't have any swing applied, it all looks good. I know that this red pepper box is my subject here. I'm going to tilt it this way. I know that this red pepper box is my subject. Now, without even looking at the ground glass, I can just look at this box. I'm thinking of planes here, right? I can look at this box and realize, okay, A, I'm shooting down. I'm shooting down at the box, and I notice too, you know, this is flat field plane, but now I've turned the box, right? So the way to interpret this is simply swinging to match the box. That makes sense? So now I'm swinging to match the field of the box, and you notice the camera is tilted down. The box is vertically straight. my back standard is not vertically straight. So what's going to happen here is I'm not only changing the perspective of the box because now the back standard's not vertical, but it's also going to be partially in focus and partially out of focus. So again, without even looking at the ground glass, because I just want to emulate the planes, all I need to do is apply some back tilt, and I could do the same here, apply some front tilt if necessary, or I would apply the front tilt. I can, just by looking, I'm guessing I would have to fall some. So roughly like this, that would get that box in focus. Now, and I went through that really fast and obtuse, but the whole idea is to get you to think in terms of planes. So this plane is matching this plane. These vertical planes are matching this vertical plane. But what I want you to notice, so the lens is wide open. This is an f8. Yep, an f8 lens. So I back tilted to get sharpness here. The Sierra crest is sharp, but what I want you to notice is that the big main hill and the small pile of rocks in the foreground there is not in sharp focus. Okay, I'm satisfying shine fluke principle, so let's do this. Okay, subject plane is the Sierra. Let's say here's the Sierra. There's my subject plane. You can see my film plane is vertical, right? And I have a little bit of tilt on the front lens, and they all intersect at this hypothetical point under the ground over here, okay? But what's happening is that big hill and these rocks in the foreground, they're down here. They're outside the shine fluke triangle, so they are not getting focused. So if you guys all step under,
And so when you say things are right, I see.
and then you just have to stop down for the rest of it.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
I ended up picking up a little bit of this mid rock, which it's not this one, but the one behind. That would require me to tilt a little bit if I wanted to include that. But so I've just raised the front standard to eliminate it. Go ahead and step under. It's wide open. You'll notice it's all completely sharp. Indian paintbrush, red wildflowers underneath this canopy of trees. If I use a red filter, I lighten those red Indian paintbrush flowers and I darken all the green trees. I create deeper shadows and more dense forest, but I lighten the Indian paintbrush. Now I say, okay, I want to try it with green. Now what I do is I darken those red Indian paintbrush flowers and I lighten the foliage in the forest. All that green foliage becomes a little bit lighter, okay? If I do the time compensation, if they say 1, 1, 1, 2, that's 1.1, 1.2, so on and so forth. So go ahead and put that on the ground glass, measure the disc.
Measure the disc?
Yep, measure the disc.
And that gives you your compensation.
It gives you your time
You measure it at the widest point, yes? Of the
Yeah,
disc.
yeah. There it is. Undo it, start over. Is that what you're doing? Okay, cool.
Is that front one level?
Yeah, you are. And you know the way to tell on the fly without even looking, turn your rig up? This is what you do. Full double rainbows! What does it all mean? Oh my God! Oh my God! Whoa!